My 6-year-old handed me a drawing and with 10 strokes of a crayon ended my marriage. It was supposed to be a simple school project. My family, 2 sons, a crooked house, a dog with 4 legs drawn badly on purpose. Then I saw her, Sarah, arm-linked with a tall, bearded stick figure, hearts above them. Underneath, in Timmy's shaky letters, Mommy's friend. I asked him the way parents always ask harmless questions. "Who's that, bud?" He looked up like this was a normal thing to ask about his homework. "That's Mommy's friend. They play games when you work." "What kind of games?" I kept my voice small. He shrugged. "Hide and seek. She says it's a secret." The house quieted. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket like I was holding a shard of glass. I let the kitchen noises keep going, the dishwasher, the tick of the clock, because if I made a sound, something might break. We built a decent life. College romance turned into a backyard wedding. Timmy came along and rewrote our routines. Sarah painted commissions. I pushed through long hours at an engineering firm. On paper, we were the kind of family people double tap in photos. That paper was the first actual thing to contradict the photos. The details that followed were small at first and precise. "Yoga," she said. "It helps with the back," she told me. Her wardrobe shifted into tighter leggings and shirts that fit better than they used to. Her phone buzzed at odd hours and she angled it out of view. Little things you explain away because the alternative is looking closely. Jake moved in 2 houses down. He had a toolbox and a grin and a habit of appearing when something needed fixing. He raked the leaves shirtless in November and smiled at Timmy like he'd been hired to babysit Goodwill. Timmy called him Uncle Jake because he taught him how to throw a ball. That was the camouflage. 2 weeks after the first drawing, another came home. "Mommy's picnic," it read. Sarah and the beard again, this time on a blanket. A plate of cookies. Timmy announced it at dinner, like we were comparing soup recipes. "They share sandwiches," he said. I started noticing patterns, not because I wanted to, because the patterns were loud. A lunch with a client that coincided with Jake mowing the lawn. Texts that arrived when we said goodnight. A shirt in the laundry that smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. Little repeats. The human brain loves pattern. Mine did what it always does. It catalogued. I confronted once the way you test a loose floorboard. I showed her the drawing across the kitchen table. "Timmy drew something neat today," I said. She smiled too fast. "Kiddos and their imaginations." "Does this look like imagination to you?" I pushed the paper forward. She reached, then hesitated. "He draws everyone weird, babe. You're overreacting." Her hands trembled minutely. She lied. Not to me alone, but to herself first. I could see the misstep in the way she blinked. I did not explode. I did not smash down the house and throw every cushion on the lawn. I am bad at being sudden. I am better at being inevitable. That's an engineer's way of thinking. Symptoms point to causes. Causes have predictable outputs. I traced the outputs. I watched where she scheduled yoga. I watched when she said she had a meeting. I listened from the car once while she talked to someone on the porch, and I heard the easy laughter of 2 people who had rehearsed many afternoons together. It was private enough to be casual. It was public enough to be visible to a man who knew how to pay attention. The second confrontation was quieter. I came home early one Tuesday. Forgot a lunch meeting. Jake's truck was out front. I stood in the kitchen, a ghost among my own things, and watched through the half-closed blinds while Sarah and Jake sat on the couch. They were close. A hand rested on the thigh. They laughed at something only they understood. I stepped inside deliberately. "Enjoying company," I said. My voice was even. Timmy looked up from his crayons and drew without looking. Sarah's face went blank. Jake stood like a man who'd been caught at the sink with the cookie jar open. "Alex," Sarah started. The words cut off because they didn't need to go on. You cannot unsee a private moment when someone holds it up to the light and says, "Look, I could have thrown him out. I could have screamed. Instead, I did what was surgical. I took notes, dates, times, the way he said her name, the way her fingers tucked into his palm for a heartbeat, and then eased away. The details matter. Details survive emotion. You will lose the emotion. You can keep the details." I started compiling what the world calls proof, not because I wanted to punish, but because truth needs anchors. I collected the drawings, I dated them, I photographed messages I caught when a phone lay face up. I wrote down the excuses and the small lies that stacked into a roof that could not hold up. I told one person, my brother, not to start a war but to get perspective. He listened once and then said, "Don't blow up the house unless you mean to live outside tomorrow." He was blunt and stupidly useful. Then I planned. If this is about humiliation, do it to force clarity. If this is about consequence, do it where others could see the pattern. Private fights can be renamed, explained, minimized. Public facts are harder to spin, so I set a public fact in motion. I created a Saturday. Block is free. Neighborhood group chat has an impromptu barbecue. Come by for burgers. I posted like any neighbor. I invited friends who had seen glimpses. I called the people who would notice the look in her mother's eyes. I cooked because appearing normal is part of the plan. I cleaned the porch. I hung lawn chairs. Timing matters. Witnesses matter. Presence matters. All the while, Timmy kept drawing. The new piece I folded into my wallet like a playing card I would reveal at the right hand. It was simple. 3 figures on opposite sides, and between them the bearded man closer to Mommy. He titled it, "Mommy's New Best Friend." He told me casually over cereal, "They kiss like in the movies." He had not seen anything sexual. He had seen affection. That was the whole of it. I am not proud of planning a public wound. I am not proud of weaponizing a child's drawing. I am not proud of anything that involves exposing a family to humiliation. But there is a useful clarity in public truth. People stop pretending when others are watching. Lies survive best in solitude. So I set the barbecue. I prepared the grill. I invited the neighborhood. I put Timmy's crayon picture in my wallet. I dressed in the quiet standard of a man who has work to do, clean shirt, no swagger, the kind of face that does not promise violence or melodrama. When the grill hissed and the first neighbors leaned in with beers in hand, I slid my hand into my pocket and felt the thin paper. The trap was simple. The stakes were clear. The reveal would be public. The cost for pretending would be immediate. This is where I stop for now. The party will start in an hour. Cars are beginning to roll in. Laughter rises from the street in that easy way people have before they learn they are part of someone else's story. I have a drawing, witnesses, and a calm I have earned. The reveal is next. The rest happens under the sun and other people's eyes. The afternoon sun flattened the street into warm light. Chairs circled the yard. Kids ran with foam balls. Neighbors drifted in with side dishes and beers. I moved through those small clusters like a man performing normalcy. I flipped burgers. I laughed at small jokes. I kept my hand over the thin paper in my pocket until the moment felt right. Sarah arrived with a salad and sunglasses. Her smile was practiced. Jake pulled up 10 minutes later carrying a 6-pack and a grill tool. He wore the polite smile of a man who thought he was still invisible to moral scrutiny. They both hugged neighbors, waved, placed their dishes down. The scene looked harmless. That was the point. I called for attention when dessert trays were passed. The chatter quieted. I cleared my throat and let my face slow into the neutral look I knew well. "Thanks for coming," I said. "I want to show you something our family made at school." Heads turned. Someone joked about kindergarten art. I held up Timmy's crayon drawing like evidence in a quiet courtroom. The paper was small in my hand but loud in the sun. This was titled "Mommy's New Best Friend," I said. I didn't need to explain more. The neighbors read the picture. Heads tilted, whispers rose. Someone's child pointed. Someone laughed nervously. Sarah paled. "Alex, what?" she started. "Timmy drew this weeks ago," I continued. "He's been drawing things and telling things for a while. I thought parents should know what their kids see." Jake's face flickered. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Alex, this is crazy. Can we talk later?" I said. "Right now, everyone's here, so let's keep it real." I let that hang there. Real is a heavy word when people are living versions of the images on their walls. Sarah tried to laugh it off. "It's a misunderstanding. Kids draw weird things." Her voice wavered. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. A neighbor who'd been friendly with Sarah for years stepped forward and said nothing. The silence said more than any speech. People began to connect dots out loud. "I thought you two were close," Mrs. Langley said. "We saw Jake over a few times." Her tone was not accusing so much as disappointed. Disappointment cuts clean. Jake muttered something about errands. He tried to minimize. One of his old clients, a man I'd invited, asked bluntly if the stories were true. The question landed like a physical thing. Jake looked at Sarah for permission. She had none to give. "Is this your way of punishing me?" she whispered to me. "You're making a show." "This is not punishment," I said. "This is public truth. You made choices that were private. Now people should know the pattern." People always prefer tidy narratives. They like endings and culprits. I handed them a sentence they could use. The crowd rearranged from curiosity to judgment. I did not revel in that. I observed it. Observation helps when the air is hot with accusation, and you need to keep breathing. Sarah begged. Tears fell, she said. "You never listened. You were never home. He understood me." The words were the classic rationales. They are small arguments propped up to justify a larger breach. They don't excuse anything. "I tried," I said. "I asked. I offered therapy. You chose to lie." Her brother demanded privacy. Her mother held her hand and looked at me like I'd chosen cruelty over kindness. I accepted the look. You cannot control how family interprets truth. You can only decide what you do with it. Neighbors left in awkward silence. Some comforted Sarah, others avoided eye contact. Jake slipped away before the conversation could get sharper. He packed his beer into the cooler like a man abandoning a slow-burning shame. A week later, I learned he listed his house for sale. The social cost was immediate and real. Sarah lost some friends. The small community that had once praised our dinners now had a distance between them and our house. People talk. People rearrange their loyalty. That is how neighborhoods re-establish moral equilibrium. But social humiliation was only the beginning. I had kept records because I knew words can be gaslit. Paper and timestamps do not apologize. With those logs, I met with a lawyer. I signed permission forms for counseling and custody. I did not go for retribution as a hobby. I built a legal framework that protected my son and gave us stability. Sarah and I separated. We did it like adults on paper. She moved in with a friend for a time. The divorce papers included a custody arrangement that prioritized Timmy's routine. He stayed with me during work weeks and with her on weekends initially. I insisted on therapy for him and for both parents. The child is the axis upon which our choices pivot. No one that mattered disputed that. Some nights I replayed the barbecue. I did not always feel triumphant. I felt stripped. You cannot stage a public exposure and expect uncomplicated closure. Humans are messy. Victors are not always at peace. What steadied me was the sight of Timmy days later, drawing with a stack of fresh paper, lines sure and bright, no bearded intruders in their family sketches. Revenge rarely looks like the movies. It often looks like rebuilding with the quiet advantage of time and better priorities. I reclaimed the small protocols, bedtime stories, Saturday pancakes, soccer practice, photo albums that matched the life I wanted him to remember. I scheduled work so I could be present for recitals and field days. I kept the house steady so Timmy's world had fewer surprises. Months later, Sarah contacted me to talk about custody changes. Her tone was different. She had lost some of the social currency that smoothed arguments. She asked if we could adjust schedules. I listened. I agreed where it served the child. I refused where it felt like a ploy. Lawyers negotiated. We reached a settlement that gave Timmy stability and gave both of us the legal clarity to move forward. Jake's exit from the neighborhood was quiet. He sold his house. Loose conversations suggested he'd been honest with his ex and paid some price in their social life. That was not my concern. I had no desire to patrol his life. My concern was the safety and sanity of my son. Therapy worked because it was framed around the child, not around adult vindication. Timmy learned to name feelings. I learned how not to make my healing about performance. A child needs consistency more than revenge. That did not mean the public reveal was wrong. It meant I used the consequence to protect, not to punish indefinitely. I won in small but meaningful ways. Employers who once questioned my focus saw my improved balance. Friends who had leaned toward the gossip either left or returned to the relationship we had before. I dated much later and with caution. The first woman I brought around was someone patient, unhurried, and who valued routine the way I did. It felt deliberate. There is a particular night I remember, months after the divorce was final. Timmy came home from school and handed me a new drawing. It was of a house with a big tree and 3 figures, a man, a boy, and a loose circle where the mother used to be. He looked up at me and said, "This is our home now. I like it." His voice was quiet but resolute. That was the line that mattered. Not the public spectacle, not the neighbors' judgments, not the legal papers. The quiet claim of a child who felt safe again. If you want a blunt lesson from this, here it is. Choice has consequence. People assume that betrayal can be contained. It rarely is. If you are the one betrayed, don't be hasty. Collect facts. Protect the child. Use public truth when private truth gets you nowhere. Use the leverage you have to secure stability. And be deliberate about what you want to rebuild. I am not naive enough to think this story ends with a neat moral. People make choices that ripple. Sometimes they do damage that time and therapy can repair. Sometimes they do damage that leaves sharper scars. But Timmy draws now without secrets. The pictures are clearer. The hearts in his work are not secret anymore. They are ordinary and strong. That is what I wanted. A small, steady life where honesty is a rule, not a secret. If you ever see a child's drawing that makes you sit up, look. Kids' crayons map what we adults camouflage. Don't ignore that map.